Our new house was uncommonly old, truly ancient. Not merely a bit worn, but the kind with protesting floors and windows that rattled when the wind swept through. My family, Mom, Dad, and my young brother Leo, moved there in the summer, right after school concluded. We came from a lively town, and this new place was quiet, almost too quiet. It sat out in the country, with many trees and an expansive wild yard that stretched far back into the woods. I was 10, and typically I loved playing outdoors, yet this yard felt different. It was immense, with tall, gnarled trees and substantial bushes that appeared to conceal things. Leo, at just 5, mainly stayed near Mom, playing with his toy cars on the porch. That left me to explore on my own. One sunny afternoon, a few days after our arrival, I was playing pretend, constructing a fort from fallen branches at the yard's edge, close to where the woods began. The leaves on the trees were dense and green, casting cool shadows. I was softly humming when a chill passed through me. It felt as if someone observed me. I froze, holding my breath. I slowly surveyed my surroundings. Nothing stirred, only the quiet rustle of leaves. Then, far back, near the imposing shadowy pine trees that delineated our property's edge from another's land, I saw him, an old man. He stood absolutely still, nearly hidden by the trees. He wore a faded blue shirt and dark pants. He wasn't waving or smiling. He simply gazed at me. His face was difficult to discern clearly due to the shadows, yet I could sense his eyes. Heart commenced a drum-like thump. I didn't know who he was. We hadn't met any neighbors yet. I longed to run, but my feet felt rooted. He simply stood there, watching. It seemed like an age, but it was likely just moments. Then, very gradually, he turned and walked deeper into the woods, like a wraith receding. I didn't inform Mom and Dad immediately. I convinced myself it was just a neighbor, perhaps someone residing in the woods, but a tiny cold sensation settled in my stomach. The next day I ventured outside once more. Mom was busy unpacking boxes. I was playing with my cherished doll, Daisy, near the large oak tree. The sun felt warm, but I persistently glanced at the wood's periphery. After a period, I sighted him again. The identical old man, in the identical position, simply standing and watching. This time, I offered a slight wave. He did not return it. He didn't even stir. He simply watched. It made my skin prickle. When Mom summoned me for lunch, I darted inside swiftly. At the table, I finally spoke to Mom. "Mom," an old man repeatedly observes me from the woods. Mom looked at me, appearing a little weary. "Oh, sweetie, that's likely just Mr. Henderson. He resides next door. He's probably just being genial, greeting the new neighbors." "He doesn't greet anyone, Mom," I stated. "He just stands there." Mom smiled. "Well, perhaps he's reserved. Don't be concerned. He's likely just curious about you and Leo." She appeared unconcerned. That made me feel a bit better, but the cold feeling did not completely vanish. A few days later, events grew stranger. I left Daisy, my doll, on a branch near the fort I was constructing. When I returned the next morning, Daisy was not on the branch. She was sitting upright, on the ground, directly in the center of our lawn. She faced our house. I distinctly recalled leaving her on the branch. I picked her up. Her hair was a little damp, despite the fact it hadn't rained. Another day, Mom opened the back door and looked surprised. "Sarah, did you leave the kitchen window open last night?" she inquired. It was only a tiny crack, but it was open. I shook my head. "No, Mom, I closed it." I always assisted Mom in closing the windows before bed. Mom merely shrugged. "Well, it must have been the wind then, or I forgot." But I knew I had closed it. My stomach felt cold again. One afternoon, Mom and Dad had to go to town for provisions. Leo was napping indoors. I was alone in the yard, playing with my jump rope near the sizable high fence that partitioned our yard from the woods. The air was still and hushed. Too hushed. Then I heard a whisper. It was faint, like leaves rubbing together, but it sounded like a voice. "Hello, Sarah." My jump rope slipped from my hands. My whole body rigidified. It was him, Mr. Henderson. He stood, On the opposite side of the fence, much closer than before. I could discern his face clearly now. His eyes were pale, nearly colorless, and they seemed to penetrate right through me. His face was aged and wrinkled, but he bore a peculiar, thin smile. "How do you know my name?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Did not reply. He merely continued smiling. "Do you enjoy playing with your doll, Daisy?" he inquired. My breath hitched. How did he know about Daisy? I hadn't brought her outside since she was discovered on the lawn. My fort was quite distant, from the fence. "Daisy becomes lonely by herself," he said, still with that strange, deliberate smile. "She needs someone to accompany her in the woods." He extended his hand. In it, he held a small, gleaming red apple. It looked remarkably sweet. "Come, Sarah. Come see my tree. It has the finest apples. And perhaps Daisy can join us too." My mind shrieked. "No," Mom always instructed. "Do not accept items from strangers. Do not go with them." But he wasn't quite a stranger, was he? Mom stated he was a neighbor, and he knew my name. He knew about Daisy. My heart thumped against my ribs like a trapped bird. My feet felt heavy. He took a step nearer to the fence, his hand still grasping the apple. "It's just a short stroll, Sarah. Just to my apple tree." His eyes were fixed on mine, and I felt I could not avert my gaze. My throat was parched. I wished to scream for Mom, but she was not home. Leo was asleep. I was alone. Suddenly, a loud car horn blared from the street. Mom and Dad had returned. My head snapped towards the sound. The spell broke. Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through me. I did not deliberate. I dropped the jump rope and bolted. I ran faster than I ever had in my life. My legs propelled me. My lungs ached. I did not glance back. I simply sprinted directly for the back door of our house, pushed it open, and burst inside, slamming it shut behind me. I fumbled with the lock, my hands shaking. Mom met me in the kitchen, her arms laden with provisions. "Sarah, what's amiss? You look like you've witnessed a phantom." Tears welled in my eyes. "The man, Mr. Henderson, he was speaking to me. He knew about Daisy. He desired me to go with him into the woods." Mom's expression shifted. Her eyes widened, and she dropped the grocery bags to the floor. Oranges scattered across the linoleum. Dad hastened in from the living room. They questioned me intensely, all at once. They examined the woods. They walked along the entire fence line. They contacted the police, who stated they would patrol and observe. But they found no one. The red apple was gone. The jump rope still lay by the fence. For the remainder of the summer, I never played in the back of the yard again. I remained near the house, or I played in the front. Sometimes when I looked out the kitchen window, I imagined a shadow moving deep within the pine trees. I never saw Mr. Henderson at close range again. But sometimes when I was outside, that cold shiver would run down my spine, as if someone watched. Even now, years later, when I recall that old house, I still feel a slight chill. Mom and Dad always asserted it was likely just an elderly man who lacked proper judgment, or that my imagination got the better of me. But I know what I witnessed, and I know he knew my name. I never comprehended what he sought, or why he repositioned Daisy, or why he possessed knowledge of her. It was simply a young girl's house in the woods, but for a brief period, it felt as though my world was being reordered by unseen forces, and I never truly felt secure there again. Story 2. This is my account. It was a Tuesday night, simply a typical evening. My name is Alex, and I was 16 years old, which permitted me to stay home unaccompanied at times. My parents, Sarah and Tom, were out at an adult dinner, and my young sister, Mia, was at Grandma's house. So, it was just me and our dog, Buster, who was slumbering on his generous, fluffy bed in the living room. I was stretched on the couch, watching a trivial show on TV and attempting to complete my history assignment. It was silent. Profoundly silent. So silent, the clock's ticks echoed in the hallway. I quite enjoyed being home alone sometimes. It felt mature. After a while, a small shiver ran through me, as if someone had walked over my grave. I looked around. Nothing. Only the shadows dancing from the TV light. Buster emitted a soft snore. I reassured myself it was merely my imagination. The old house always produced peculiar sounds regardless. It creaked and groaned, especially when the wind gusted outside. But this night, there was no wind. Just the house, I murmured, seeking to comfort myself. I decided a snack was in order. I rose from the couch and proceeded to the kitchen. I retrieved a bag of crisps and a juice box. When I returned to the living room, I halted. Something had changed. My favorite blue blanket, which I had just carefully folded and placed on the back of the couch, now lay crumpled on the floor. And the book I was reading, The Hobbit, which I'd left on the coffee table, was inverted. I stared at it. "Huh," I vocalized. Buster lifted his head, gave a soft woof, then lowered his head once more. "Must have kicked it," I mused, despite knowing I hadn't approached the coffee table. I picked up the blanket and returned it to the couch, then righted the book. My heart executed a tiny little jump. It was unsettling, but not yet truly frightening. Not yet. I crunched my crisps and tried to concentrate on my show, but I couldn't discard the feeling. I kept glancing at the hallway, then at the front door. Every faint creak made me start. Buster remained asleep, so he wasn't creating noise. Later, near 10 o'clock, I determined it was time for bed. I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I was humming a tune when I heard it, a soft, tiny tap. It sounded as if it originated from the bathroom door directly behind me. I froze, toothbrush midway to my mouth. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice a little reedy, no response. I waited. The tap came again. Tap, tap. Like a finger, gently tapping on the wood. My hand commenced trembling. It wasn't the wind. It was too soft, too distinct. I gingerly, exceedingly slowly, reached for the doorknob. My hand felt cold and clammy. I twisted the knob and pulled the door open. No one. The hallway lay empty. The lights were off, and shadows stretched long and dark. My gaze drifted to my bedroom door. I had left it wide open, as was my habit. But now, it was closed. Not just a crack, it was tightly shut. My breath hitched in my throat. I knew I hadn't closed it. I never closed my bedroom door when home alone. A substantial knot formed in my stomach. Someone was in the house. My mind raced. Could it be Mom and Dad, playing a prank? No, they wouldn't perform such a frightening act. I grasped my phone, which was in my pocket, and fumbled with it. I yearned to call Mom, but my hands shook uncontrollably. I took a deep breath. "Right, Alex. Maintain calm." I crept forward, my bare feet silent on the carpet. Each step felt heavy. I reached my bedroom door. It was so quiet I could hear my own heart thumping in my ears. Thump, 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 thump. I placed my ear against the door. Nothing. Only the house's quiet hum. Gingerly, I nudged the door a sliver open. It was dark inside. I reached for the light switch and flicked it on. My eyes darted around the room. It appeared normal. My bed, my desk, my dresser. Everything occupied its proper place. I took a step inside, peering under the bed, behind the curtains, empty. Then, my eyes caught on something. Behind my large wooden dresser, positioned in the room's corner, there was a gap, simply a small space where the dresser did not quite meet the wall. And from that gap, I perceived it. A hand. It was a human hand. It was pale, and it clutched the outermost edge of the dresser, mostly concealed, yet allowing me to glimpse the tips of fingers and a thumb. It was utterly motionless, as if it waited. My heart exploded in my chest. My entire body turned cold, then hot, then cold once more. Someone hid in my room, right there. I didn't scream. I could not. All the air departed my lungs in a silent gasp. I retreated cautiously, step by hesitant step, striving to make no sound. My eyes remained fixed on that hand. It did not move. When I was out of my room, I turned and ran. I ran down the hall, past Buster, who merely lifted his head, bewildered. I burst into my parents' bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands trembled so violently I almost couldn't turn the lock. I fumbled for my phone and at last dialed Mom's number. It rang and rang. She did not answer. I tried Dad. Voicemail. Tears streamed down my face. I backed against the wall, sliding to a seated position on the floor, my knees drawn to my chest. Buster, perceiving my fear, approached and nudged his head against my hand, whining softly. I put my ear against the bedroom door, straining to listen. The house fell silent again, for an extended minute. Then, I heard it. Slow footsteps. Not fast, not running, just slow, quiet steps progressing down the hallway. Creak, creak, creak. They drew nearer. My breathing dissolved into shallow gasps. I could discern the outline of something dark under the crack of the door. Shoes. Someone stood directly outside my parents' bedroom door. I heard a soft click. The doorknob. Someone was attempting the doorknob. Slowly. Gently. But it was locked. What a relief it was locked. More silence. Then the footsteps receded. Creak. Creak. They returned down the hall. Then I heard a faint thump, thump, thump as they descended the stairs. I heard the soft click of the front door opening, then closing. No slam, just a quiet closure. I waited. I cannot say for how long. Perhaps 10 minutes, perhaps 20. Every shadow appeared monstrous. Every tiny noise made me start. Finally, I heard the sound of Mom and Dad's car pulling into the driveway. Never in my life had I been so pleased to hear their noisy old car. I unlocked the door and burst out, crying, trying to recount everything. Mom and Dad contacted the police. 2 officers arrived. They surveyed the house. They inspected every room, every closet, even beneath the beds. They found no one. There was no broken window, no forced door. Nothing was missing. But then I showed them my room. The police officer observed the hand-sized gap behind my dresser. He commented it was a good hiding spot, and he saw my book remained, inverted, and the blanket was back on the couch, but it differed subtly from its original placement. It was as if someone had smoothed it, but did not know precisely how I folded it. The police could not offer much assistance. They suggested perhaps it was someone with an old key, or that I had left a window unlocked without realizing. They completed a report and advised us to be cautious. That night proved the worst of my life. I could not sleep. Every shadow, every creak made me jump. I slept in my parents' room for a week. Nothing was stolen. No one suffered harm. But the knowledge that someone had been in my house, watching me, moving my belongings, hiding in my room while I was just feet away, it transformed me. Now, years later, I still verify every lock twice. I still peer under my bed before I retire for the night. And sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I swear I can feel that identical cold shiver, as if someone watches, merely awaiting the lights to extinguish. And I ponder, what did they desire? Why were they there? And why did they simply depart after moving a book and a blanket and concealing themselves behind my dresser? I'll never discover the answer, and that is the most terrifying element.